Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today is March 11th, 2022, and we are continuing our coverage of the 10th day of the Russo-Ukrainian war that is taking place in Eastern Europe. So first, before I start off the battlefield assessment of what is happening inside and around Ukraine, I wanted to talk about very, very quickly something that I have quite often noticed on some of the mainstream media networks, and that is using the term when identifying a wealthy Russian individual as a oligarch. Have you ever noticed that? Whenever we watch the news, a extremely wealthy Russian individual is identified as an oligarch. Is Warren Buffett an oligarch? Was Steve Jobs an oligarch? Is Bill Gates an oligarch? They are not identified as oligarchs. Only wealthy individuals in Russia are called oligarchs within the confines of the mainstream media news. So why do you think that is? Think about that for a second. There's a reason they do that. And that is it's an attempt to dehumanize the individual that they are talking about. Whatever their stand is in terms of where they stand within the prosecution of the war, some of these so-called quote-unquote oligarchs are against the conflict, and some obviously are not. But again, for the most part, when the mainstream media, BBC, CNN, Fox, when they talk about a wealthy Russian, they usually utilize the term oligarch. Well, let's start calling Zuckerberg an oligarch. Let's start talking about Jack Dorsey as an oligarch. But we don't hear that, do we? Just a point I wanted to quickly point out as we continue our venture down what we are looking at happening in the Ukraine. But first, we're going to go up to Kiev, back to the battlefield coverage, and again, the Russians continue its efforts to circumvent and envelop Kiev. Now, we are seeing some localized counterattacks by the armed forces of Ukraine. Specifically and most recently, we have seen Russian forces get pushed out of this area here, Bucha. And again, they were pushed back more towards the Antonov airfield that the Russians continue to control. Now, with that being said, the Russians do continue its advances again in a by southeasterly direction. And again, the goals of that operation, both in the west of Kiev and to the east of Kiev, looks to be to eventually seal Kiev off. But as I have talked about before, this is going to be a very, very difficult military task for the battlefield commanders involved in this endeavor. The Ukrainians are resisting in an incredibly aggressive manner. They are fairly well equipped at this point in terms of anti-tank guided missile systems. Obviously, we're starting to see more and more anti-aircraft systems as well. Some of the more man-portable aircraft systems that are used against some of the Russian helicopter gunships. And those supplies continue to move into the country as we speak. But again, right now, the Russians continue its envelopment operation in and around Kiev. It looks like they're no longer attacking Chernihiv in a direct conventional manner. They're using artillery to seal off and destroy the outer edges of Chernihiv, and at times striking deep inside of Chernihiv as well. And at the same time, we continue to see the Russians exploit some of its breakthrough operations in the east as well. And again, this right here, as you can see on my map, indicates that they are going to continue to press forward, and at some point, they are going to seal off both the Chernihiv pocket in the north, and also, it looks like they are going to attempt to seal off the western or the eastern bank of Kiev. And again, probably one of their main military objectives at this point is the main international airport. As you can see here on my map, it's a dual-use facility. Obviously, it's used for civilian use, and it is also used for military purposes as well. Now, our understanding is that it is not being used for military purposes at this time, as the Russians are just too close and have the ability to shoot down any aircraft that would be taking off from the facility. Most of the Ukrainian air assets that are taking off are happening in the western portions of the country, and also through the use of actual highways as well. But we're watching this very, very closely as the Russians continue to maneuver and exploit this fairly large breakthrough, in which they are looking to both pocket the military units of the Ukraine that are operating near Chernihiv, and then at the same time eventually cut off the eastern bank and the supply routes that can move into eastern Kiev, and then obviously also into western Kiev as well. And then quite possibly at some point to meet up with forces near the Dnieper River with these Russian forces that are maneuvering to the west of Kiev as well. But again, the Ukrainians continue to be a very tenacious adversary in terms of their resistance to the Russians. They continue to mount defensive and, in some cases, defensive or offensive operations as well. In other areas, we continue to see localized breakthroughs. We've seen this both to the north of Kiev, Kharkov, and we've seen it to the south of Kharkov as well. We're starting to see more of some of the eastern separatists also being backed by elements of the 150th Motorized Rifle Division continuing its operations. We can also see here another breakthrough near Luhansk to the northwest of Luhansk, and again, that looks to maneuver and eventually meet up with forces that are operating near Kharkov to the northwest. In the south, we are of the understanding that Mariupol is being reduced. The Russian military is actively using heavy artillery, Grad rockets, to pummel Mariupol into submission, or quite frankly, destroy it. Luckily, a lot of the civilian populations have access to bomb shelters that are inside of the city. Nonetheless, we are seeing the destruction of a lot of homes, a lot of infrastructure, and it will be a long time before Mariupol is again in the state of affairs that it was before the conflict started. But the Russians continue to drive on Mariupol and continue to utilize heavy artillery in reducing this city. Some estimates indicate that the city could fall within the next 48 hours. Again, given the size of the city and the force construct that is inside of the city, of the Ukrainian military, of the volunteers that are fighting inside of Mariupol, I would say at this point it could definitely go longer than 48 hours unless they capitulate. I think at this point really food and ammunition is the one thing that would become the main issue in terms of if the Ukrainians continue to struggle and resist in Mariupol. Again, as long as they have food, as long as they have ammunition, I believe they can resist. Once that is cut off and they run out of those supplies, then obviously that becomes very, very much more difficult. But the fighting continues in that area. We're watching it very, very closely. Some analysts believe within 48 hours, Mariupol could, in fact, fall. The other area we continue to watch, the Russian forces exploit breakthroughs, especially in the western sector of the Crimean offensive. As we know, the Russians have seized control of Kherson and have moved towards Mykolaiv, and continue to maneuver northeast and west of Mykolaiv as well. And I'm going to try now and explain why you're kind of seeing this sort of maneuvering by the Russians. You can see them. You would believe that they're trying to encircle Mykolaiv, but in all actuality, this effort up here to the north is designed to secure bridgeheads. So, if you look at this main terrain feature, in terms of the river, the Privdeni River that runs along the just to the west of Mykolaiv, there are not a lot of bridges on this river. If you move up along the river, and as you get towards the actual city, there is one bridge that can get you across this river. And in order to access this bridge, if in fact the Ukrainians have not destroyed it, which I do not believe they have as of yet, again, they're probably going to wait and see if the Russians make a move to secure the bridge. And in all likelihood, I don't think that's going to happen. Reason being is, again, to secure this bridge, the Russians are going to have to go through some very, very dense urban terrain, and there is significant resistance in Ukrainian forces that have built up in this city. So again, the only way to access this bridge is to go through basically the center of the city. And again, a very, very narrow area of operations for the Russians to operate in as well. So this would be a very, very challenging military endeavor that would probably incur the Russians significant losses. They may move up and secure the airfield possibly. I would say that they're just probably going to stay on the fringes of the city and secure access points into the city. And what we're now seeing is they're maneuvering further to the north because as you see, as we move up the river, you will be able to see the next set of bridges that the Russians can operate in. And you have one here. And actually, no, that's a ferry. My apologies. But the next set of bridges that the Russians can actually seek to cross the Privdeni River is up here at this town. And there are two bridge crossings here. So outside of forcing their way into Mykolaiv, the only alternative for the Russians is to maneuver further north-northwest and establish river crossings further to the north-northwest. And that makes sense because the river would narrow, and if the Ukrainians destroy these bridges, the Russians could establish pontoon bridges because of the narrowness of the river area in this area. But you can clearly see what the Russians are trying to do right now. They made reconnaissance in force towards Mykolaiv. They understand now that there's quite a bit of resistance in Mykolaiv. In fact, some of the Ukrainian army units that were in Kherson, some of the territorial defense brigades that were in Kherson have since moved towards and have moved into Mykolaiv. So again, this is going to be a very, very tough nut to crack for the Russians. So what they're looking at is sealing off Mykolaiv and then moving further to the northwest and establishing a bridgehead over the Privdeni River in this locale. And then that would allow the Russians to possibly make a move on the big prize, the third largest city, which is Odessa. which would be the last working port that the Ukrainians have at this point. But again, that really doesn't mean anything because the Russians can blockade all of these ports, and they're doing that as we speak. We've seen an Estonian flagged ship hit and sink. We have also seen a Bangladesh flagged vessel hit and possibly sink as well. But again, right now, it does appear initially that is what the Russians are looking to do, is again establish bridgeheads over these rivers where they can then move ground forces towards Odessa. The Russian military has amphibious assets, but I do not believe the Russians are going to make an amphibious landing to the east or west of Odessa at this point because those forces could become isolated and, in fact, quite possibly destroyed. Given the level of resistance by the Ukrainians. The Russians are first going to need ground forces that can move in and assist these naval infantry when they land. They could hold out for a bit, but again, they're not going to be able to hold out for any longer than a week if, in fact, Russian ground forces are not able to assist in operations near Odessa. So again, that's why you're seeing this happen. In terms of the way the Russians are moving near Mykolaiv. And again, that's to secure those bridgeheads further northwest of Mykolaiv. And again, it doesn't really get any easier. There are multiple terrain features that could stop the Russians as they continue to move on Odessa. So this is going to be a lengthy campaign to maneuver near Odessa, and it could be quite possibly another week or two before the Russians are in a position where they could in fact land amphibious forces near Odessa and then have the ability to continue to maneuver ground forces overland over the Ukraine to assist in any operation near Odessa. But it does appear now at least the Russians want to seize the entire coastline of the Ukraine, and quite frankly, right now it would appear that the military objective, the war goal, the war aim of the Russian Federation is the complete capitulation of Ukraine and seizing the entire country. They may not say they're doing that, and they may once, if they're able to, and if they're able to seize Kiev, they will institute a puppet government and utilize some of those forces that eventually will gravitate towards that puppet government. And then you obviously have the forces of the Eastern separatists as well that will augment the forces of this new government if and when that is installed. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves right now. This continues to be a very, very active military campaign, and nothing has been written in stone yet. Again, the Russians continue broad front operations typical of Russian military doctrine. While they're probably not where they want to be in terms of the actual prior planning of the conflict, they are making progress, and they are achieving objectives, I would say, irregards to the seizing of some of these large cities, which I don't think the Russians are going to do. I think, again, they're going to seal them off, especially cities like Kharkov, Kiev, cities like even Mykolaiv, Odessa, and some other big ones as well. Another city is this city over here. This is going to be one hell of an issue for the Russians to try and circumnavigate. And again, this city is very elongated and is going to be very, very difficult to seal off, and could possibly become the center of gravity in terms of Ukrainian resistance in the east. And again, that's Kryvyi Rih, is I believe the pronunciation of that town. But we'll continue to monitor the situation and report on all events as they warrant. Again, we're continuing to monitor the situation very, very closely, and we'll have more content very, very soon. Have a good day, everybody.